I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello and welcome to the Sandhills TV3 special, The Last Full Measure, a tribute to those who defend our freedoms. I'm Kimberly Corgan. 64 years ago, the world was at war. In Europe, England stood alone against Hitler's awesome war machine, which had conquered all of Western Europe and was on the verge of overrunning Russia. In the Pacific, the Japanese Empire had conquered large portions of Korea and China and was turning westward towards the resource-rich West Indies. Tension between America and Japan was at an all-time high, but many people believed that war could be averted. Those hopes were dashed when on a beautiful Sunday in December 1941, Japanese warplanes swept down on the unsuspecting U.S. battle fleet based at Pearl Harbor.
On December the 7th, the morning of December the 7th, we had a crew of 1,379 that consisted of 85 officers and 3 Marine officers, 1,279 crew, that included 77 Marines. I had an early breakfast at around 7:15 in the morning, and I headed down to the pay office to pay off boatswain mate first class Robert Frederick Jackson, who had shipped over the day before for 4 more years in the Navy. And exactly at 7:55, they sounded general quarters, all hands man your battle stations. So I ran to the porthole, the large porthole we had in the pay office, and looked out. And just then a Kate bomber had released its first torpedo for the Oklahoma. The plane was so low that I could see the pilot's face, and he was grinning like a possum eating you know what. And I thought for sure he was going to go into our Mamus. He was that low, but he missed it. And just then the first torpedo hit. Now, each torpedo that hit the Oklahoma contained 452 pounds of explosive. I turned around and I hollered out. When I saw the rising sun on the wing, I hollered out. I said, blank, blank, the Japs are here. So I ran out and went down to my battle station on the 3rd deck. And when I got down there to my ammunition handling supply, I was all by myself, so I started closing the watertight doors between compartments. And when I slammed this last dog down on this one door, the second torpedo hit in the next compartment, hit a fuel tank, sprung the door, and I was completely covered with oil from head to foot. And I had to clear my eyes, and I turned around, and water was really pouring down from the 2nd deck, and I could feel the ship listing to the port side. So I went up on the 2nd deck, I went up the ladder to the 2nd deck, and water was already waist high. And 2 of my shipmates were standing there, and I looked up. There was 2 sailors going to close the main deck hatch, and I says, hold it. I says, we're coming up. So I motioned to my 2 shipmates. I says, come on. I said, let's get out of here. And they said, Swede, this ship is only going to go over so far, and it'll stop. So I went up, and I found out later that they did not make it. I had to climb by rope to get to the starboard side of the Oklahoma. And I sat down on the blister ledge and turned around, and I looked up into the sky and saw these bombers coming over like a flock of ducks. And all at once I saw this big one drop from this one bomber that hit the USS Arizona, and that 36,000-ton battleship just went up with fire and flames 500 feet in the air.
In a little more than 2 hours' time, the backbone of U.S. naval power in the Pacific lay in ruins. 21 ships of the U.S. Pacific Fleet were sunk or damaged. 189 U.S. aircraft were destroyed on the ground, and another 159 were damaged. 2,403 Americans were dead, and another 1,178 were wounded. The vast majority of the casualties were on the USS Arizona, which blew up, killing 1,103 of the 1,400 men on board, and the USS Oklahoma, which took 5 torpedoes and capsized 20 minutes into the attack, losing 429 men.
The second attack happened at, I think it was 8:45. That consisted of 171 aircraft. And about 3 or 4 hours after the second attack, they passed the word for all Oklahoma survivors to muster on Ford Island. And when I got over there, and I found out that I was the only survivor out of 7 in the pay office. That included the paymaster, the chief, 2 first class, and that I was the only survivor.
Within days of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese attacked throughout Asia, sinking on December 10th the pride of the British Navy, HMS Prince of Wales and Repulse. Overrunning island after island, capturing Hong Kong on December 25, 1941, Manila in the Philippines on January 2, 1942, and attacking Bataan on January 7, 1942.
They sent us back to Bataan to sit up a Bukai Hacienda line, and that way every time the Japanese would send troops into, they were having enough of trouble, but they was trying to take the Philippines so they could move on to Baja California, and the Germans was gonna give them planes and whatnot to bomb the United States, but being that we didn't let them get through the Philippines like they wanted to, reason they couldn't get through is because when we eliminated the troops that they had sent in there, they had to wait for reinforcements. And it took a while for reinforcements to get there, but they was almost like sitting on the sidelines watching us starve to death because we run out of food. We eat all of our horses and mules and anything else that we could get to eat, and people were down to nothing.
For more than 90 days, the outnumbered, outgunned defenders of Bataan fought a desperate struggle to stem the Japanese advance in the Pacific. But on April 9, 1942, the 70,000 American and Filipino troops surrendered to the Japanese, and for those who survived, the real terror was about to begin.
The 4 people that I was trying to stay with on the march was Clifton Kirkland, and not Clifton Kirkland, but John Freeman and James Frank Snyder from Charlotte, North Carolina, and Captain, I believe his name was Muirhead from Greensboro or someplace. I forget where he was from. But anyway, on that march, one of the Japanese that was educated in the United States dropped a bottle of Coca-Cola that he probably got in China or someplace, because the 4th Marines had come in from China after Japan took over China before they come on into the Philippines. But yet the 4th Marines that come into China, they helped us a lot. Without them, we might not have been able to make it, as well as the Navy that was there. Everybody played an important role in defense of the Philippines.
The Bataan Death March began on April 10, 1942. The emaciated survivors were forced to march 90 miles during 6 days to a prison camp. Men were beaten at random and denied food and water for several days. Men who fell behind or even stopped to relieve themselves were shot or beheaded. Of the 70,000 men who started the march, 54,000 made it to Camp O'Donnell. The treatment continued throughout the war. Nearly 40% of American prisoners died in Japanese prisoner of war camps, as opposed to less than 2% in German camps.
I would say, I might be off key, but I would say at least 100,000 died in the first 2 months after Bataan fell, April the 9th.
At the end of World War II, the Japanese commander General Hama was tried and convicted for the atrocities committed against American troops. He was executed outside Manila on April 3, 1946.